I'm Sophie David from Little Happy Learners and I'm an education specialist. I was once a reception teacher for many years and I am also a mum of three. So I have been in the classroom and I've been on the other side. So today I'm going to tell you just a little bit more about phonics and what to expect from that first year of school and how we can make it fun for our children. So what is phonics? Phonics is very simply linking letters and sounds. So instead of this being an A, it is an A. In reception, your children will start and straight away they will come in and they will start having phonics lessons. And the way that it's taught is that it's one sound each day and there's 4 letters taught each week. And what they'll do is they'll come in and they will sit on the carpet and they will have a phonics session with their teacher. The teacher generally will follow the same pattern and routine every day, and they will sit and they will look at a new sound. They will look at the name of the letter, so this is an A and it makes the sound A. The way that I teach at home with my children is I always try to think about what sounds the teacher's teaching in school, and then at home I will then look at that sound with them and I'll add an action. So for this it would be an A, or an A. So this is your A for apple, this is your A for ant. As soon as your child starts school, it's really good to get that dialogue going with the teacher to find out what it is that they're learning so you can get really on board with it. The basics are that your children will learn the letter names, the sounds, and they'll start to learn to sound and blend. It's really very simple. The one thing that is really important to remember is to use our pure sounds when we're teaching our children at home. So a pure sound is when we make one mouth movement when we do the sound. So I'll give you an example. We want to say instead of m. So if you are saying m and l and n, what you're doing is you're adding something called a schwa onto the end of that letter. And that on the end is a schwa sound, and we add that schwa onto the end of our letters, but we don't want to. We want to make it a pure sound. And the reason why is because it helps our children when it comes to their reading and their writing. We want them to sound out a word like k, at, cat. If we have that schwa on the end, it would be k, at, they then become really distinct, one sound, and it makes it much more complex for our children to sound and blend. So we want to just ensure that we are using those pure sounds. There are lots of videos on my Instagram, on my socials, and there's lots on YouTube that show you the pure sounds, so make sure that you're doing that. The next step in reading and writing and phonics is we want our children to start to blend. And blending is very simple. It's just putting the letters together to make a word. So we say d-og, dog. So we want them to hear it. A really good way of developing this skill is by doing it in context. So what we want to do is we want to develop our children's listening skills throughout the summer. So you might want to say to them, oh, shall we go upstairs to bed? And what they start to do is, because it's in context, they start to hear those sounds and it makes it much easier for them. You might be outside and say, can you see the bus? Can you pass me the cup? So what you might have noticed that I'm only using 3-letter words, and that's because they're called CVC words, consonant, vowel, consonant. And we want to use those words to begin with because it makes it much easier for our children to be able to break up the sound, spell it and write it. So that pattern of consonant, vowel, consonant just makes it much easier. So for example, I'll give you another CVC word. We've got s, sun. So things that we can start doing over the summer to develop that skill is by blending in context, by saying, can you see this? But also explaining to them what vowels are. Our vowels are A, E, I, O, U, do. And the reason why we want them to understand those vowels is because vowels become very important when it comes to our reading and writing skills. We want our children to be confident and we want them to really come into our school settings feeling like they can do it. So doing these little activities before school starts really does help to build that confidence. We don't need our children to read and write before they start school, but we do want them to thrive when they do start school. So by doing these little snippets of activities, before school really does help. So some ways that you can embed that phonics fun into your summer is by getting some foam letters for your bath, throw them in the bath and just start exploring the sounds that they make. You can hide letters around your house or your garden, get them to start really thinking about what those letters are. And if you're really, really keen to get started, you could even start practicing writing their name. And a way to do that is by rolling out a big piece of paper, getting some paint sticks and getting them to explore on paper nice and big. You could do it in sensory trays. You can even do it in your garden on the patio, and you could write with water and paintbrushes, or you can use rollers. There's so many different ideas about getting really nice big movements, so it's really fun for our children. Another one that they absolutely love is writing on the windows. So paint sticks on the windows is always a winner because it's something that they shouldn't really do, but they love it. So that's a really good way of getting those fine and gross motor skills going too. So let's go back to what to expect from a phonics session. They usually last around 15 to 20 minutes. So we really do want our children to explore those sounds. We want them to start blending. We want them to start applying that knowledge to writing. So we'll start to look at the sounds they make, and then we'll start blending them into words. We'll start looking at words that those letters begin with. So if we take A, for instance, what we will start doing is saying, can we look for different things around the room that start with an A, like apple, ant, acrobat. There's lots of different words that start with A. We just want to see if we can start to really think about those initial sounds in words. It's really important to mention that when your children start school, they do not learn the letters alphabetically. They start in a pattern called SATPIN, so that's SATPIN. And the reason why they do that in schools is not to confuse us, it's so that our children can start to sound and blend words to read and write as early as possible. So that way we're 6 letters in the alphabet and we can start writing so many different words like sat, pin. If we did it alphabetically, we would have to get into 9 letters in the alphabet before we can start blending words, which it means that we're 3 weeks into our term and we still can't start applying that knowledge. That's why it starts in this pattern of SATPIN. Another thing to mention is that our children will learn sounds, they'll learn the letter names, and they will also start to sound and blend. They'll start to segment for spelling. So we'll say to them, can you spell the word pen? And then you put up 3 fingers and we say p, e, n, p, e, n. Can you hear the first sound in pen? P. Can you hear the next sound? P, e, n. What's this middle sound? E. And what's that last sound? N, pen. But also, as well as learning how to sound and blend, we want to get our children to remember some tricky words. And tricky words are words that you can't sound out. They don't follow those usual rules. So it's words like no, go, to. So if we were to sound out to using phonetic knowledge, we would say t, o, to. But what we want our children to start to do is to look at words and say, here, this star indicates this letter here. It doesn't follow its usual pattern. The O is not making its usual sound of O. It's actually making an oo sound here. So if we sound it out, we can say t, oo, to. We can learn by lots of different tricks like that, by really starting to think about what sounds are trying to trick us, or we could just try to remember them by sight. In phase 2 phonics, there's only 5 different tricky words, and that's the, I, no, go, and to. So if you really want to get a head start, you can start looking at those and trying to get our children to remember them. You could even put them on the fridge next to their bed, different places around the house so that they can try to remember them. That will really help them with their fluency when it comes to reading. A question that I'm always asked is, when will my children bring a book home? That depends on the school. Every school's different. Some schools follow a really rigid phonics scheme where the children will not get a book until they can sound or they know 10 to 12 sounds. Other schools want to send books home straight away, so it just depends on the school. But when they do get a book home, it's really important to note that you want to get them to enjoy reading. So if it's a chore and they really don't want to finish that book, then do not make them. 1 page of the book is absolutely fine. They do not need to read it beginning to end at all. And also it's really good to highlight here that our children are very, very very tired when they first start school. So we want to go easy on them, take your time and really enjoy the process. So try to take that pressure away. They don't need to read an entire book as soon as they get one. As your child progresses into their reception year, so after that autumn term going into January, they will start to learn something called a digraph. A digraph is two letters that make one sound. So it's like the S and the H coming together to make the sh sound. There's lots and lots of digraphs and lots of trigraphs, which are three letters that make one sound. And our children will start to learn them very soon, very early on. It's really good to know this now as a little nugget of information, that when your child does come home with these different words like digraph and they're starting to learn to do that blending and using these more complex sounds, that you have an idea of what it is. So there are lots of different ways you can support phonics and numbers before your children start school, but what I would say is that the best way to do it is just start tuning into sounds, play some listening games like I Spy with My Little Eye. That's always a really fun one, and we can start to build those essential phonics skills of listening. That's the most important step in phonics, is listening. So if you feel like your child's not quite ready for sounds, start tuning into the sounds around you, like in your environment. What can you hear? Is that a bird? Label those sounds that you're hearing. I can hear footsteps, I can hear a car, I can hear a train. This is the first step in phonics, is hearing and listening to our environment and what we can hear around us and labelling it. So if your child's not quite ready, that's the step you need to take. Like I said, you can start introducing letters into your play. So if you are going to do some ice play, maybe freeze some letters in your ice and get them to unveil them and chip them away and excavate those letters and really enjoy looking at them. Put them in your bath, put them in your shower, stick them to your windows, get them everywhere, because as soon as they start school, it's going to be something they do every single day. So if they've got them around them before, it's a really good step to getting them really aware of their letters and sounds. And then start practicing that blending. So doing that blending in context, try and do it maybe when you're in the car, maybe when you're on a walk. Any of those opportunities to start sounding and blending is a really, really good chance to get them just that one step ahead and feeling really confident before they start. And the last thing that I'd suggest doing is that if you are not already reading a book a day to your child, start to read every single day over the summer. Make it a challenge. If you can get a book and you can read it with your children every single day, they will become more enthralled. My advice is get a chapter book, really get them excited about reading the next part of the book every day. Some really beautiful ones are the Enid Blyton Faraway Tree. That's a really good collection. It gets them really excited about turning the pages and finding out what happens in the next bit. So just in summary of everything that I've spoken about here, phonics is a journey and children go at their own pace. You do not need to hurry this up. This is not a pressure point to say start doing phonics before summer and get them ready. It is just some tips and tricks that I've learned along the way of being a mum and having my own class. It's really nice to just get your children really confident and aware of the sounds in their environment and around them. So if you start with some short fun activities during the summer, you will get them feeling really confident. But to end this, I would just like to say the things that you really can start thinking about before your children start school is developing their independence, getting them really confident with putting their shoes on, their socks, their clothes, using cutlery. And something that was always underestimated with children is their ability to hold a tray. They do start having to do that right from the very beginning in reception. They hold their tray with their bowl, with their plate and their cutlery on it. Really try and get them to practice that skill, because it can be quite daunting for them right at the beginning. There will be lots of opportunities to speak to your child's teacher before they start school. So if you do have any concerns, make sure you tell them before September so they can start getting ready for anything that you might be worried about, and they can keep that on their radar for when they do start school. But in that initial beginning couple of weeks when your children start school, remember it's a lot for them. That settling process can be really daunting for some, and a beautiful way of getting our children ready, especially if that separation is really tricky, is simply putting a little heart on your hand and theirs and telling them that you're always connected throughout the day. And if at all they're feeling worried or sad, they can look at their heart and know that you're there with them. That's something that I've done with my children and they have loved it. I hope that you found this useful. If you have any questions, please reach out to me, and I will endeavour to answer them at any given point. So I hope that you have an amazing summer and you and your children start to feel school ready for September.